Uh, Hello everyone. I am Urijit Tirhangi. I am from Begampur, Hooghly district. Currently pursuing BCA in cybersecurity from Tilak Modern Vidyapith, Pune. And I have decided to making videos in English because whenever I am trying to speak in English, I become got too much nervous. I'm not able to explain the topic. I am already aware of it. So recently I am learning about OAuth. So what is OAuth 2.0? OAuth stands for Open Authorization. It's an open standard authorization framework. It's a what is mean by that open standard? Open standard means it's a publicly set up rules or protocol that define how authorization should work across different system. So using OAuth, we can log in any third-party service provider without sharing our login credential. That's how it works. But in OAuth authorization, in OAuth authentication, there are three parties actually involved: user, who is me, actually it's me, is a resource owner, and the service provider, and there is an identity provider. So example, I want to access any services from third party service provider, so I will try to log in using Google Auth. So whenever I try to log in using Google Auth or any Auth services in Facebook or Twitter, so service provider will make a request for authorization code to the identity provider, and identity provider will redirect the user to the identity provider will make some ask some proof of identity from user. So first user have to log in their credential, and then user have to accept their consent. After authentication, identity provider will provide an authorization code to the service provider, and service provider will make another request with authorization code and client ID and client secret, and it also include another parameter called redirect URI, which is a callback URI, where the access token need to be sent. So what is the client ID and client secret? Client ID, it's a unique identifier for the service provider, and client secret is a secret key. So example, it's there is a two type of authorization auth grant type. There is a authorization code grant type and implicit code grant type. In authorization code grant type, whenever I am requesting for access token from identity provider will check the client ID and client secret are legitimate for legitimate user or not, or that are actually exist or not. So if it exists on their system, there is a valid client ID and client secret, then identity provider will provide an access token to the service provider, and the service provider will using that access token make a request for the user resources. Example, they want to access the user email addresses or contact details, you can make another request with the access token from identity provider, then identity provider will provide user info to the service provider. That's how it's work. But there is an implicit grant type. In implicit grant type, whenever user trying to access their resources from service provider, example, this is the client application is the service provider, or browser agent is the user. Okay, using browser agent trying to access browser agent means it is a user trying to access the request. So it's making another authorization request from service provider. Service provider will redirect ask for proof of identity from user. So user have to log in here, log in their credential. After login authentication, identity provider will directly provide the access token. In case of authorization grant type, what is happening? It's checking. First we have to provide authorization code, and it's a one-time use. After using the one authorization code for if I use the authorization code already, then we cannot. We have to make another request for authorization code. So in implicit grant there is nothing there. So after authentication, user directly getting the access token, and using the access token, they can make an API call from user info or resource server for the user details. So in authorization code grant type, what is happening? It's the extra layer of security. Like user have to make another request with authorization code and client ID and client secret, and that should be the valid. So example, I want to use what's Google Auth services in my application. I have to register Google developer site for Auth services, and Google will provide me a provide a client ID which is unique for me, and the client secret that will be required whenever I try to exchange for access token. That's why implicit grant is less secure, and the authorization code is more secure than the implicit grant type. That's all. I will next video I will talk about how we can exploit the auth vulnerability. I will go through some labs from Portswigger. That's all.